you just don't know. You could wake up, as my mom used to say, and be the most powerful man in the universe, and, in the afternoon come home in a coffin.
Once in a while, you get a reminder about the way life was and still can be when significant people stand up and lead by example. Today, we sat down with Anthony Shriver, the well-regarded member of the Kennedy family, who created Best Buddies International to help millions struggling with challenges they were born with. Following in the footsteps of his legendary mom and dad, Shriver believes we are here on Earth to serve others with everything we've got. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., a special episode of 13th and Park.
The hard things that are necessary, we either do it or we'll pay the price down the road.
That often is missing in politics.
We have to solve everything.
It's a nightmare.
You and I can differ, but that doesn't mean you and I cannot be friends.
I have faith in the American people.
Those are the facts.
The Illuminati, right there. Aliens could have invaded and nothing would surprise me at this point.
We went from North Korea to M&M. That's a lot, man.
What's in this tea?
Anthony, wonderful to have you on the show today.
Sure.
Just you walking in, I said, okay, this is Miami Beach, right? The way you're dressed, the way I'm now
Washington
dressed.
boy, don't forget that, though. Born in Boston, but grew up here in Washington, D.C.
Do you miss it at all?
I do when I come back, It's so different. People are so different. Culture's so different. Spring's a great time here.
Yeah.
I love the trees and the green grass. And I do miss it, but not sure it's the right place for me to live anymore.
Well, it's changing, of course, by the moment.
Of course.
So you were at one point in your life, early in life, a student at Georgetown, and you came up with this idea for Best Buddies while you were there, right? And now it's 3,000 chapters around the world, millions affected. How has Best Buddies evolved from that kid who had an idea at Georgetown to what we're now talking about today?
It's been a great journey, first and foremost. I mean, I've been super blessed. I feel so lucky every day to do what I do. And it enriches my soul in so many different ways every single day. And being connected to our population, they're so special and so unique and gifted. And I continue to love and appreciate so much being around people with special needs and to be able to do this work. And it's grown to be something, I'm super proud of. We have almost 500 people now working at Best Buddies. Wow. And this year we'll raise almost $100 million. And impact almost 1 million people. And it's just so gratifying to see, the good that can come when people come together around a great cause and a great group of people. And, it's reassuring that there's really a lot of good in this world, a lot of good people, honest people, hardworking people, people that just want the best for their children, just like I want for my kid. And, I'm just so proud that, Best Buddies can play a small role in that journey of their life and, give them the support, the hand, the respite care, the time off, or just the sense that, their kid does belong and they're getting asked out. And, for a parent, when your kid's alone, I was at my kid's regional tennis match yesterday, and he's out there, and it was really a brutal kind of toxic environment with all the other kids screaming from the other school and really getting aggressive and kind of mean, to be honest with you.
Right.
You see your kid out there by himself on a tennis court. It's heartbreaking to see him going at it alone, although that's life. And I was thinking as I was watching, people with the parents of people with intellectual disabilities, it's got to break their heart when they see their kid being left out of the conversation, left out of just sitting at a table in a lunchroom, left out of the employment space, left out of the housing space. It's just heart-wrenching for, a parent to see your child alone. You see that so often in so many schools. Kids can be so mean. So, the fact that Best Buddies can play a role, and I think bridging the gap, bringing people together, hopefully teaching young people, to have respect and kindness is really the most attractive quality in a human being.
So describe Best Buddies, what they do, who they help, and the impact of that, not just on those families, but on whole communities.
Yeah, well, we do a lot of different things. I mean, I think at our core, what we do is we try to make people that have intellectual developmental disabilities, which means basically an IQ of 75 and under, that they count, that they matter, that they have a seat at every table in every aspect of life. From the womb to the tomb, as I call it, because we started Uni's Buddies a year and a half ago in honor of my mom. So how can we support a baby with respect and kindness, and how can we support that person's journey through life till the day they die? And that's really what Best Buddies is about. Now, we do it through a whole variety of different vehicles. We do it in schools where we pair people up in mentoring, friendship programs. We do it through really good 5-star housing programs. We do it through great employment opportunities. We do it through counseling, support, and mentoring to mothers when they're expecting a child with intellectual disabilities and they're pregnant, they get that diagnosis. We do it through leadership opportunities to give them an opportunity to be front and center and to share their story with our communities to hopefully inspire and motivate. So we try to do it in a whole variety of different ways, but in the core of it, it's making people feel like they count, they matter, they have something to say, and it's worthwhile, and that their life is of value.
One of the statistics I saw the other day was 1 in 6 children have developmental disabilities in America. 1 in 6. You're not talking about a small number. You're talking about a huge number.
Millions.
So the impact of what you're doing to help is not a small thing, and the need is humongous, right?
Yeah, it's huge. And I know it's such a cliche, and I hate to even say it, but the rewards that you get back are just, monumental, right? And, the people that I've met through this journey and the kindness that I've seen in so many different parts of our country and around the world. You see the best in our humanity. You see the best in people when you do this kind of work. And it's so reassuring every single day to keep reminding yourself there's so much good. There's so many good people like you. You're a good guy, you're a nice guy, kind guy. You're doing good work with this whole project and you're sharing so many good, powerful, inspiring stories. And, hopefully it makes people feel better to counter all the negativity that's going on out there in the world. And, hopefully it will inspire, this show, inspire people to go into leadership positions and that they'll take the step and, get out into this political challenging environment that we have so much in Washington. I mean, I grew up in this city. I love Washington. I lived here for 26 years of my life, but it's so challenging. And, I worry so much. How can we get people to devote their lives to the nonprofit sector? How can we get people to devote their lives to the political sector? Because if we can't get good people, it's just, it's so overwhelming. And why do so many challenged people emotionally, spiritually end up in these powerful positions? It's really a quandary that I just can't get through my head. How do they elevate themselves into these enormously powerful positions? And they seem to be so challenged, emotionally and spiritually themselves. How can we get the good people off the sidelines and into the game?
Well, let's talk about inspiration. So, your mom, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the works that she did in this area that really led to things like the Special Olympics.
Yeah.
Your dad was no slouch. He created the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
You have this incredible inspiration in your family of giving back, of service, that it's not something you have to be asked to do.
I never felt like it was a must. I felt like it was a privilege. Opportunity. It comes it's all rooted in our faith. It's the message of Jesus Christ. It's the message of St. Paul, to whom much is given, much is expected. It's the challenge that we're faced with every single day. How can you be a living example? And I think being in the NGO sector gives us that opportunity to actually show it. And what we find, which is why we all stay in it, and it's addictive.
Yeah.
Good is addictive. If you can make that a pattern and create that as part of your routine, I find that it can continue to grow and build. So I think we just have to find ways to motivate people to start doing good in small ways. It's like all these things. It's like what my cousin Bobby talks about so much. How can we get people in small ways to start eating better?
Yeah.
Just little ways, because you can't tell someone that's eating really badly, change your diet overnight. It won't last. They may do it for 7 days, 14 days, but it's not sustainable. I always say this to my son: how can you just get on first base? He always wants to hit the home run.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to throw the bomb at recess and score a touchdown. How can you just get 5 yards and then get another 5 yards and get another 5 yards, and one day you'll wake up and you'll have a touchdown, right? How can we get people into this work? How can we get people into the spirit of doing good? How can we spread the beauty of kindness and love in the world slowly and just keep building on that? And I think my parents did such a great job sitting around the table. They made the work seem so wonderful and fun and dynamic and challenging. Our conversations at the table were so great and, always, challenging you to think differently and to reflect on what you're doing and how can you do better, because we're all trying to do something good for each other.
But you talk about being around the family dinner table, right? That seems to be going by the boards, right? But yet that's one of the most powerful building blocks of cohesion, not just for a family, but for being reminded
Yeah,
what it is you should be doing
correct.
after dinner is over
Yeah.
and make the world just a little bit better
Well,
place.
no one takes a beat anymore. They never pause. They never sit and
Right.
convert, just like what you're doing, which is why I think your show's so great. You got 2.5 million followers. It's not shocking to me because you're just sitting and your mannerisms and your spirit is so calm and kind and welcoming. People want to be part of that. And I think viewers want to hear someone that's like that you don't have to like attack me or beat me up. It doesn't have to be, I got you, or, a quick headline, you know what I mean? So it's not surprising, too, with our faith, what it was the last thing that Jesus Christ did on Holy Thursday. He broke bread and had dinner.
Yeah.
With his disciples. In the Jewish faith and the history, what is it? It's Shabbat dinner. It's
Right.
Friday night. You guys, you're Jewish, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you,
I thought Goodman would give it away, but that's okay.
Yeah, I did, but I don't. You know how it is.
Right.
You got to be careful. It's such a beautiful. I live kind of in a Jewish neighborhood in Miami Beach. And, every Friday I see all my Jewish neighbors walking with their children. It's what a great tradition that is to, go for a walk with your children and turn the phones off and, go to the synagogue and then break bread and sit down and have dinner and turn everything off on Saturday. And, my family, we all celebrate and go to Mass every Sunday without fail. My older kids bring their grandkids and we all kind of have our Shabbat, but it's breakfast after Mass. And, I still sit down and have dinner every single night at home at 6:30 sharp. I think it's such a, as you say, a great way for us to keep our families united, to keep conversation going, to share our value system for our children to know what are my values, how can I express them, and how can I challenge them, how can they challenge me on where they are and what's going on in their school. And I don't know how we can, inspire more families to do that other than, do it ourselves and have people hear about it on the show.
So you mentioned, your cousin. I find him fascinating.
Yeah.
And so much is not understood about Bobby, right? Because he's relatively new on the more national scene, right?
Correct.
What is it about him that maybe people don't know, that you understand because you know him so well? Because, some find him controversial, some find him inspirational, but very few seem to really know what is motivating him to do what he's trying to do.
I hope all the people out there will recognize that he's really genuine and he's really doing all this because he's doing it from the heart and because he really believes passionately in what he says. Mm-hmm. He's lived a really super challenging life. He lived a super challenging childhood. All of our childhoods were pretty, wild from most perspectives. So, he's no exception to the rule. He doesn't deserve special consideration, but, we all have our challenging journeys, right? So he's had his, but I think in the end of the day, he's super genuine. And I always recognize, even when I was little, he's 12 years older than me, but when I was little, he was someone that always wanted to include everybody. And I've said this many times, and that has come through from day one. I don't care how many people you have as friends or house guests, they're always welcome at Bobby's house. I don't care, when he's having dinner, if you walk in with 5 people, he'll tell them, pull up a chair.
Yeah.
So, I think that behavior and that mentality is really a true reflection of who he is. And I think he wants to bring that same mentality to our country, right? He wants to make sure that everybody rises up with the tide and everybody is included in the process and that people aren't left out. I think sometimes he can be all over the place and he's not, enormously disciplined, enormously focused in one specific area. He's runs around, jumps around. He's got a lot of energy. He would, I think, agree to that. It can kind of be, all over. But I think one good quality he has too is when he's wrong or he's proven to be wrong, he'll accept it and he'll move in a new direction, which I think is a great quality because many people, with ego, they never would admit they're wrong and they'll never switch gears. I think he will.
It seems, though, that he is willing to ask the questions that just have not been asked.
Correct.
And looking for the answers that we haven't found. That seems to be something that is a part of his DNA.
He doesn't always do it the smoothest way.
Okay.
Maybe he doesn't always do it in the softest way. And I think it incites people to get angry often sometimes. And I think his recent stuff with the autism community, I think it could have been presented maybe in a little bit of a different manner and gotten the same results. So I think that comes with experience. To be in this actual spotlight and have it all on you in this way is unusual.
Do you think that bothers him at all?
One thing I know for sure, that none of this stuff bothers Bobby. It's really quite remarkable. I think he's so used to being beat up it rolls, to be honest with you. It's really an incredible quality. I mean, I'd be, stressing out and, feeling so bad and like praying like crazy. I think he just knows it's just part of the game. He just keeps going. I mean, I think one thing that we were really taught when we were little that, have a pretty good ability to compartmentalize stuff and pretty good ability to accept it, see it, and then just boom, move on and put that thing under the carpet and just keep grinding and keep moving. Just go, 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 go.
You've said before, Anthony, that you have a certain amount of time. Is that something that drives you to try to do as much as you can while you're here, right? And is that something that you try to convey to others? Don't count on, tomorrow always happening, right? Do what you can right now.
100%. I really believe it. And, I feel it more strongly today than I've ever have in my life. I mean, we're probably close to the same age. I mean,
You're 33 or so, right?
You're 42, I'm 38.
Right.
It's just, you just don't know. And I mean, I learned that lesson too when I was young because so many people in my family had died through my life and I've been to so many funerals through my life. You just don't know. You could wake up, as my mom used to say, and be the most powerful man in the universe and, in the afternoon come home in a coffin.
Yeah.
And it just goes so quick. Even if you get good 85, 90 years, it's still super fast. Mm-hmm. Life is so precious. Time is so precious. It's fleeting. It's going so fast. And, I was saying this to my son about, losing in his tennis match. Coming back and fighting the battle once you lose is really such a great gift to come right back at it. And then what he's got to really decide, and what I always try to decide, what I'm doing, do I love the process? To me, it's not what's the end goal. It's not whether he wins. I love winning like nobody else, but it's not about the winning. It's like, do you thrive in the process? Do you love the whole process? Like to me, I set goals all the time with my fitness. I set goals all the time with, my budget, with best buddies, with, side business deals. The goals all the time. But once the goal's achieved, it's such a letdown.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, sure.
It's like, as soon as I get it, I like, what's the next thing?
Yep.
Because I love the whole journey, the challenge of figuring it out, the whole journey to get to the end.
So are you kind of an optimist, an eternal optimist? You seem to project that. You like shout that practically. Yeah. And when you look at the country and where the country is and where it's going, you feel good and hopeful that we all have challenges. We've always had challenges throughout time, that we're going to somehow find a way to meet those challenges. On the other side of it, we're going to come out not only whole, but maybe wiser and better.
100%. I know that because, it's suffering, right? We all suffer in different ways. The CEO of NVIDIA was saying that he wishes everybody in that class suffers in some way. And I was saying that to my son yesterday when he was suffering on the tennis court and he lost and it was upsetting to all of us. But that suffering is where the real...
Powerful.
It's so powerful, right? I know the country, has suffered in such great ways before. I lived through the whole Nixon thing, and I remember my dad's anger and fury over Richard Nixon and Watergate and that scandal. My family lived through the Vietnam War. I was very young, and my dad used to talk about World War II and, the Holocaust. I mean, talk about dark days. I mean, wow, you think it couldn't get any worse. To me, what's going on today pales in comparison to what was going on in 45 and the 40s and how the political climate was so toxic and how challenging it was economically when Jimmy Carter was president in the 70s. I remember the lines to the gas stations being miles long.
Remember that? Oh, sure.
Oh, my God. My dad and I, we'd sit in the car. It's so scary. People focus and really get all caught up in their moment and their time, and they always think it's the worst thing in the history of the world. And, oh, my God, we're never going to survive. I don't believe that. And I believe our country's an unbelievable institution. To me, the United States is the greatest place in the history of the universe.
But in the nonprofit sector, we're always as strong as our weakest link. Isn't that the expression?
Yep.
And that we have to help everybody have an opportunity and an opening to share in the dream, so to speak, right? But it's a challenging environment for nonprofits, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's always challenging. It's a tough business,
Yeah.
People don't really see it that way. But, everybody's after the same donors. Everybody's after the government for money. For me, it's trying to stay focused in on the mission. For me, it's always elevating the people we serve, making sure they're front and center and they have a chance on the stage, that they belong on the stage. And if people see the work and they see what you're doing, they see the impact, you always win. I think, it's keeping your head down, trying to stay focused, keep your ego in check, right?
Yeah.
And keep doing the right thing. And the right thing's not always attractive. And, as I always say to my kids, Satan sells a really, really good product. And he's a really tempting guy. And, especially living like in Miami Beach, every other car seems like on Miami Beach to be a Rolls or a Ferrari or a Lambo. Right. It's like one of the observations my kid made yesterday. He says, Dad, I haven't seen one Rolls since I've been here. I said, Joey, we're probably going to be here this whole week and never see one. Right. It's the culture's so different, right? But it's easy to get lured in. It's like bad food. It's drugs. It's, consumerism. It's money. Those things are such an attractive thing to buy into.
You talk about leadership. The best kind of leadership is leading by example. The best kind of behavior is doing the right thing as best you can.
So why do you think so many of our leaders don't do that?
I think, the system and other things that have grown up around this, one, have made it much more difficult. And two, it seems like there is almost a shyness about doing courageous, bold, right things, right? But those that do, tend to reap the rewards of that, and then the herd follows, right?
Right.
But I'm a big optimist like you are, Anthony. And I want you to know that, a lot of people spend their lives trying to do good things and helpful things. You've done that in a big way. You had a very tremendous family and a tremendous family influence. I can only imagine what the dining table was like, the dinner table, rather. That must have been fascinating conversations.
Yeah. I'm still doing it. Come, you're welcome anytime. 6:30, you're always welcome.
You do it every day.
I do it every night, yeah. I had Bobby's kid, Finn, staying with me for a week. And my daughter, just graduated from Georgetown, was there, and my son and me. And we had a couple of really great nights of, dinner conversation, talked about so many interesting things. And, there's a lot of young people that are really on it and good and, smart and reflective. And how can we get their voice to become louder? How can we get them into the dialogue? How can we get them into the thing? Because the negativity is so prominent in our culture today. How do we address that, and they can get in the game, and they don't have to sit on the sidelines all the time.
Well, Anthony, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks for being who you are.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed this, by the way.
No,
we got pretty philosophical, but it's
good.
really easy with you. You already have me thinking beyond my playbox to things maybe that I want to do more about. Right. And I think you have that impact on people.
Thank you. Super kind. Thank you for taking the time and the interest.
Been great.